Hey y'all, have y'all seen this from the White House? It was a lab leak about the true origins of COVID-19. It says the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated naturally. Number one, the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. Two, data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Three, Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain of function research, gene altering, and organism supercharging at inadequate biosafety levels. Wuhan Institute of Virology, or the WIV, researchers were sick with COVID like symptoms in the fall of 2019, months before COVID-19 was discovered in the wet market. Five, by nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but it hasn't. So here's I guess, Hunan Seafood Market. It's 7.5 miles away from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China. Let's see here. It says proximal origin publication. The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated in nature. Gain of function research, a lab related incident involving gain of function research is the most likely origin of COVID-19. Current government mechanisms for overseeing the dangerous gain of function research are incomplete, severely convoluted, and lack global applicability. And then EcoHealth Alliance Inc., EcoHealth, EcoHealth, under the leadership of Dr. Peter Daszak, used taxpayer dollars to facilitate dangerous gain of function research in Wuhan, China, after the select subcommittee released evidence of EcoHealth violating the terms of its National Institutes of Health grant. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, commenced official debarment proceedings and suspended all funding to EcoHealth. New evidence also shows that the Department of Justice, or the DOJ, has opened an investigation into EcoHealth's pandemic era activities. NIH failures. NIH's procedures for funding and overseeing potentially dangerous research are deficient, unreliable, and pose a serious threat to both public health and national security. Further, NIH fostered an environment that promoted evading federal record keeping laws, as seen through the actions of Dr. David Morenz and FOIA Lady Marge Moore. A full and unconditional pardon of any offenses against the United States which he may have committed or taken part in from January 1st, 2014. Says executive grant of clemency, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, to all to whom these presents shall come. Greeting, be it known that this day I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States, pursuant to my powers under Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution, have granted unto Dr. Anthony S. Fauci a full and unconditional pardon for any offenses against the United States which he may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 to the day of this pardon, arising from or in any manner related to his service as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president, in testimony whereof I have hereunto signed my name and caused the seal of the Department of Justice to be affixed. So basically, whatever date all this is, let's see, done at the city of Washington this 19th day of January in the year of our Lord 2025, and of the independence of the United States, the 249th. What? Is that what that says? Okay. And then Joseph R. Biden, president. Okay, so HHS obstruction, the Biden administration, HHS excuse me, engaged in a multi-year campaign of delay, confusion, and non-responsiveness in attempts to obstruct the select subcommittee's investigation and hide evidence that could incriminate or embarrass senior public health officials. It appears that HHS even intentionally under-resourced its component that responds to legislative oversight requests. EcoHealth obstruction. EcoHealth President Dr. Peter Daszak obstructed the select subcommittee's investigation by providing publicly available information, instructing his staff to reduce the scope and pace of productions and doctoring documents before releasing them to the public. Further, Dr. Daszak provided false statements to Congress. Dr. David Morin's, Dr. Fauci's senior advisor, Dr. David Morin's, deliberately obstructed the select subcommittee's investigation, likely lied to Congress on multiple occasions, unlawfully deleted federal COVID-19 records, and shared non-public information about NIH grant processes with EcoHealth President Dr. Peter Daszak. New York obstruction. New York's executive chamber, led presently by Governor Kathy Hochul, redacted documents, offered numerous illegitimate privilege claims, and withheld thousands of documents with an apparent legal basis to obstruct the select subcommittee's investigation into former Governor Cuomo's pandemic era failures. We'll look at this video, I think, in just a second, if it'll play on here. It says, breaking news, COVID-19 lab leak, theory, cover up, probed in Senate, blah, blah, blah. World Health Organization, the WHO's, that's what they call it, the WHO's response to the COVID-19 pandemic was an abject failure because it caved to pressure from the Chinese Communist Party and placed China's political interests ahead of its international duties. Further, the WHO's newest effort to solve the problems exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic via a pandemic treaty may harm the United States. Social distancing. The 6 feet apart social distancing recommendation, which shut down schools and small businesses across the country, was arbitrary and not based on science. During closed-door testimony, Dr. Fauci testified that the guidance sort of just appeared. Mask mandates. There was no conclusive evidence that masks effectively protected Americans from COVID-19. Public health officials flip-flopped on the efficacy of masks without providing American scientific data, causing a massive uptick in public distrust. Lockdowns. Prolonged lockdowns caused immeasurable harm to not only the American economy, but also to the mental and physical health of Americans, with a particularly negative effect on younger citizens. Rather than prioritizing the protection of the most vulnerable populations, federal and state government policies forced millions of Americans to forego crucial elements of a healthy and financially sound life. New York pandemic failures. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's March 25th order, which forced nursing homes to accept COVID 19 positive patients, was medical malpractice. Evidence shows that Mr. Cuomo and his administration worked to cover up the tragic aftermath of their policy decisions in an apparent effort to shield themselves from accountability. Evidence suggests Mr. Cuomo knowingly and willingly made false statements to the select subcommittee on numerous occasions about material aspects of New York's COVID-19 nursing home disaster and the ensuing cover up. The select subcommittee referred Mr. Cuomo to the DOJ for criminal prosecution. And then Andrew Cuomo failure. I guess there's probably some article or something there. COVID-19 misinformation. Public health officials often misled the American people through conflicting messaging, knee-jerk reactions, and a lack of transparency. Most egregiously, the federal government demonized alternative treatments and disfavored narratives such as the lab leak theory in a shameful effort to coerce and control the American people's health decisions. When those efforts failed, the Biden administration resorted to outright censorship, coercing and colluding with the world's largest social media companies to censor all COVID-19 related dissent. And then here is a 557-page document about the select committee or subcommittee on coronavirus from Chairman Brad Winstrup, and I'm sure a bunch of other people. It says, after action review of the COVID-19 pandemic, the lessons learned and a path forward. This final report, select subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, Congress of the United States. It says, dear colleague, it's been my distinct pleasure to lead the select subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic for the 118th Congress. I was honored to be entrusted with the great responsibility to investigate a once in a 100-year pandemic and to prepare America for the next time. And there will be a next time. This is a responsibility I take very seriously, and I believe that seriousness and teamwork has translated into much success. 5 years ago, on December 1st, 2019, was what would eventually be the first confirmed case of COVID-19. After that, a pandemic devastated the world at nearly never before seen proportions, leaving millions dead and millions more concerned about long-term consequences. COVID-19 was novel. The brightest scientists and medical experts were learning on the job to determine how to treat both the underlying disease and the second-order side effects. Since February 2023, the select subcommittee sought to produce a full after-action report to provide a roadmap of how we in Congress, the executive, and the private sector may better prepare for and respond to future pandemics. Throughout this process, the select subcommittee sent more than 100 investigative letters, conducted 38 transcribed interviews or depositions, held 25 hearings or meetings, and reviewed more than 1 million pages of documents from dozens of custodians. This work looks back on many events, comments, guidances, and other actions to look forward. This is the single most thorough review of the pandemic conducted today. It says, most of you know me. You know I strive to work collegially with our fellow Americans to provide results for all of us. That is the same mentality I brought to my work as chairman of the select subcommittee. During a time of intense partisanship, the select subcommittee had bipartisan consensus across multiple topics. The possibility that COVID-19 emerged because of laboratory or research-related accident is not a conspiracy theory. EcoHealth Alliance Inc. and Dr. Peter Daszak should never again receive U.S. taxpayer dollars, and and he shouldn't be able to practice, but whatever. Scientific messaging must be clear and concise, backed by evidentiary support, and come from trusted messengers, such as frontline doctors treating patients. Public health officials must work to regain America's trust. America wants to be educated, not indoctrinated. And then former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo participated in medical malpractice and publicly covered up the total number of nursing home fatalities in New York. In addition to these notable bipartisan successes, the subcommittee, developed extensive findings, some of which include the U.S. National Institutes of Health funded gain of function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the Chinese government, agencies within the U.S. government, and some members of the international scientific community sought to cover up facts concerning the origins of the pandemic. Operation Warp Speed was a tremendous success and a model to build upon in the future. The vaccines, which are now probably better characterized as therapeutics, undoubtedly saved millions of lives by diminishing likelihood of severe disease and death. Rampant fraud, waste, and abuse plagued the COVID-19 pandemic response. Pandemic era school closures will have enduring impact on generations of Americans' children, and these closures were enabled by groups meant to serve those children. The Constitution cannot be suspended in times of crisis, and restrictions on freedoms sow distrust in public health. And then the prescription cannot be worse than the disease, such as strict and overly broad lockdowns that led to predictable anguish and avoidable consequences. Chairing the Select Subcommittee for the 118th Congress has been my honor. I said from the beginning, this work is the single most impactful responsibility I've undertaken in 12 years in Congress, and it has been. This work will help the United States and the world predict the next pandemic, prepare for the next pandemic, protect ourselves from the next pandemic, and hopefully prevent the next pandemic. Members of the 119th Congress should continue and build off this work. There is more information to find and honest actions to be taken. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted a distrust in leadership. Trust is earned. Accountability, transparency, honesty, and integrity will regain this trust. A future pandemic requires a whole of America response managed by those without personal benefit or bias. We can always do better, and for the sake of the future generations of Americans, we must, and it can be done. This is Brad Winstrup, DPM, and then Chairman. I'm going to put this as an attachment, but let's look at this video. Sorry, I have to go back up here and see what this has to say. Oh, I'm not watching the whole thing. We'll just read or watch a little.
The COVID-19 pandemic was one of the worst public health crises that our country has ever faced. We lost more than 1 million Americans to the virus, family members and neighbors, friends and colleagues, and millions more died around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic led to a once-in-a-generation event that not only threatened our public health, but also created unprecedented challenges to our economic and homeland security, as well as our very way of life. As Americans navigated the COVID-19 pandemic, they endured changing healthcare guidance, uncertainty and misinformation about how to best protect themselves and their families from this deadly virus. Today's hearing is intended to examine the available scientific evidence related to the virus that causes COVID-19 and provides some transparency to Americans who are continuing to have to navigate their exposure to the virus. As chairman of this committee, I led an investigation into the federal government's initial pandemic response. The report was called Historically Unprepared and included recommendations on how we can ensure that we're better prepared to prevent and respond to future pandemics. This March, I also launched a bipartisan biosecurity and life science research investigation with Ranking Member Paul to look into a wide range of constantly evolving biological risks and threats to better enhance our preparedness for future incidents. This morning, we're going to hear from academic experts who can discuss how COVID-19 pandemic may have started and how we can learn from this outbreak to better address future potential infectious disease outbreaks and protect human life. Better understanding of the possible origins of COVID-19 pandemic is not only important to our public health, it is also a matter of homeland security.
So I'll link all this in there in the video description, but that way, you know, you can go back and read all those pages if you so desire. I don't desire it right now. It's interesting, you know, that they're coming out with all of this now, but of course, all this stuff was covered up early on. But anyway, y'all have a good afternoon. Oh, darn it. Sorry. I meant to unshare. Uh, I'll get those other videos for the JFK files put on. It's just like another about 40 pages just for 3 different documents. So anyway, but hopefully that helps with the lab leak stuff. Get some of this COVID-19 nonsense out of your brain if you were thinking about it ever. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how all this stuff is coming out now that we have Trump in office. But yeah, anyway, like, share, and subscribe. Talk to y'all later. Bye.